Eddie Barco here with the Nebula Music Podcast, and today I'm excited to be speaking with Todd Pritchard. Todd is an amazingly talented guitarist who's always posting videos on Instagram and YouTube, and basically anywhere that you can find him, he's got a massive following, and it's well-deserved because he's arguably one of the best guitarists I have seen. In our conversation, we talked about his early music career and how his move to Philadelphia essentially helped him create his unique style because he was constantly challenged to improve himself and to always bring his A game. And on top of that, we got a chance to talk about how he balances his life and social media and how he's always recalibrating himself to make sure that he's always on the right path. I think it's something very important for all of us creative people to understand, and frankly, I'm excited for this conversation. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. All right, what's up, everybody? Eddie Barco here again, and I'm really excited because today I have the one, the only Todd Pritchard joining me on my episode. Todd, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm really excited. We were talking a little bit before the episode, and you definitely like podcasts, and we were both geeking out about the Joe Rogan podcast, which I'm a big fan of. I think you're a big fan of. And if anyone out there is listening, and maybe this is your first podcast listening, we highly recommend that you listen to that podcast because it definitely is very raw, and it's a good thing to listen to. But one thing you told me, which I found it funny, is that you said, like, if you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, then you're definitely a cool guy, which makes me feel much better coming from Todd, because Todd, you're an unbelievable guitarist. You're absolutely talented and just phenomenal. And I can spend hours talking about all the cool stuff that you do, but I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that you get a chance to talk about yourself. So Todd, why don't you go ahead and catch us up? Tell us a little bit about you, maybe what you're from, how you started with music, and then we'll go from there.
All right, man. Sounds good. I got started when I was like a teenager playing, and kind of like it was the only path for me really with education for college because I really wasn't into anything else. So kind of jumped on that boat and started in like doing some more performance stuff and studying jazz and classical and just kind of really getting exposed to a lot of different kinds of music. Around that time, I got into kind of the jazz, funk, soul sort of vibe, the Jay Dilla esque sort of music as well. So for that kind of helped combine to form my style the way it is today. Started playing with some people. I went to school in South Jersey, so I met some people who tied me into the scene at Philadelphia, which was like the R&B jazz scene. And I was just like totally tripping out at the way these guys could play, and kind of got swooped up into that scene. And I've been playing in Philadelphia ever since. So how you know about me is probably from like the social media stuff, and broke up with my band at the time. This was like maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. And I just wanted a creative outlet, just a way that I could compose. And I knew I wanted to just play, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just started kind of putting little snippets online. And I guess that's how we're talking to each other right now. We just like I've met so many cool people through the social media kind of realm and just putting stuff online. So just really fortunate to be here right now. And thanks again for having me.
No, thank you, man, for taking the time, just because I'm a big fan. I've been seeing your stuff around for a while, and I'll have to be honest with you, I finally built up the courage to ask you. I've been thinking about it for a little while, and I finally got a chance to send you a message, and you said yes right away, which I am very grateful for, which means you're just a really cool guy.
Oh, no, man, I really appreciate you reaching out. And like, it's funny, like I wanted to get my own podcast going a couple years back, but it just kind of fell through. I just wanted to do a vibe where I just talked about music and life and just, nothing like kind of geared towards one specific genre, but kind of like the Joe Rogan vibe where it's like you just get cool people on that you dig, and then wherever the conversation goes,
it goes.
We'll go there. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a pleasure talking to you, man. Sure.
Dude, the feeling is mutual. So I'm curious a little bit about like more of like your childhood, or actually rather, let me say it this way. So you went from New Jersey to Philadelphia, right? And so growing up in the East Coast is definitely very different from growing up in the West Coast, but at least for the music scene, I imagine the music scene in New Jersey wasn't that great. But I'm curious why you picked Philadelphia. And again, I'm not so well versed as to what it's like to grow up in the East Coast, but I know a lot of my friends, you know, they end up going to Manhattan or New York to, you know, do music stuff because the music scene there is pretty big, you know? So I'm curious, like, what made you decide to go to Philadelphia, if I can ask?
So I grew up in North Jersey, like probably like 30 minutes outside of New York City. And the music scene there was killing, but it was like really expensive to go to school there. Oh, yeah. I got this offer to go like in state at Rowan University in South Jersey, and it was cheap, and I just wanted to go to school at the time. To be honest with you, I wasn't that great of a student. I was kind of just figuring out still what I wanted to do. So it seemed like a good move at the time for academically and financially as well. So I just kind of jumped on that boat, and through the more of like the curriculum and my friends got exposed to some cool music. But then Philadelphia was about 20 minutes away from South Jersey, and I was starting a band at the time called LP Styles, and I bet you could still find some recordings of our stuff online. We had a little EP out that we, about 5 or 6 years ago that we put out. But anyway,
what style was your band, if I could ask?
It was like a more laid back kind of snarky puppy. Like,
interesting.
Yeah. It was like jazz, funk, soul. It was like Soul Live meets John Scofield meets maybe a little bit more fusion. I was like, at that time, I was like really just kind of like into groove music, and I was listening to a lot of hip hop too, which was kind of infused in there. And the drummer, Tom Leslie, who I went to school with at the time, and we linked up, and I owe a lot of my rhythmic ability to him, because he had such a great pocket and a great feel, and just playing with him was like definitely an important part of my musical journey. I was really blessed to meet up with some just incredible musicians that kind of pushed me. One being the saxophone player by the name of Max Swan, who went to University of the Arts, which is in Philadelphia. So he was playing with my band at the time. And we started doing gigs in Philadelphia because there was nothing going on in South Jersey. The music scene was completely dead. So we would go to Philadelphia, and eventually he'd introduce me to all his classmates at the University of the Arts. And there was this jam session that we would go to at, it was called Club Time. And if you're ever in Philadelphia, definitely check out this club. It's called Club Time. And it's like a jazz bar / whiskey bar. Anyway, on Monday nights, they would have this jam session, and the touring musicians from that were like Jill Scott, Lady Gaga, nice. All these like kind of larger acts. So there was this community of musicians that would jam there, and it was free. You could just walk in, and I remember the first time walking in and hearing these guys play, and I was like, "That's what I want to do." That's exactly like the way that they played and their feel and everything. That's so it was cool. Just like so I would just go every Monday and just kind of record sets on my phone and just kind of listen back, and eventually got the guts to go up and start playing with them. But that was a big influence on my sound and where I took my career for sure.
That's crazy. You know, what year was this when you started checking out that club?
2012.
2012.
Yeah, around then, 2012.
Have you ever heard of a place? Let me ask you this. Do you ever come out to LA a lot? I think you've been out here for like the NAMM show, but do you ever come out to hang out?
Yeah, but like I don't usually, whenever I go, it's usually for work. So I usually don't have that much time. I have been to not the Baked Potato, but the other one.
Blue Whale?
Anyway, yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah, that's the spot. See, all the jazz greats go to the Blue Whale. Anyone ever tries to visit LA, you got to go check out the Blue Whale. But I'm actually curious. I wanted to ask you if you've ever heard of a place called the Hotel Cafe in LA.
I have. Yes.
You have, yeah. See, okay, so that's, if anyone hasn't heard of the Hotel Cafe, do yourself a favor and research that venue, because that venue sounds a lot like what you're describing, but the LA version, because the Hotel Cafe, up until maybe a couple years ago, was relatively still unknown in terms of social media. And it's a hub, like you were saying, for a lot of the touring musicians and just really, really good musicians that are in LA. They all kind of hang out there with a lot of good artists. And every week or so, they have not necessarily a jam session, but they have like a songwriters night where like the, up and coming songwriters go and just jam out and just play their latest songs. And all the greatest touring musicians are just hanging out and playing with these singer-songwriters. People that play with like John Mayer, Katy Perry, like all these people are just there, just having drinks. And so that to me was an introduction, like maybe like a year or two ago, that blew my mind. So I can only imagine how you must have felt like walking into that club and seeing all these people. They're like, oh shit, these people were just playing in an arena last week and now they're here just hanging out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But what was weird about it was that I didn't know who they were, because a lot of the touring musicians, you don't really know who they are. They're just kind of like behind the scenes. So I wasn't really kind of into that whole community yet. I didn't network my way into all those, different sort of touring groups. And what was cool about the jam sessions there was that there was no stage. There wasn't a separation between the audience and the band. It was like everyone was kind of on the same level. And that's what I love about like the Philly vibes in general, is that you'll see like a dude that'll just look like a blue collar worker just roll up and just crush, like smash, you don't see someone in Philly and be like, oh, that dude's a musician, like everyone just kind of like got a laid back vibe, and they just kind of just back it up with the way they play. And that's a big thing that was cool about the scene there, was that you just see people walk up and play and you'd be like, well, that was the best keyboard player I've ever heard. Like, where did he come from? So it was, I just really liked the vibe there. So,
do you feel like you have that similar vibe? I'm not saying blue collar. I'm saying more like you kind of are just chilled out. You don't necessarily walk around like you're this badass guitarist that I know you are.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, man, it's like whenever I come back to Philly and I go to these clubs and I just listen to these guys, there are just so many musicians here that are just world class that nobody will ever hear about. And I'm constantly humbled being from this city or living in the city and coming back and like hearing the players that come out of this city. They're just incredible. So in terms of there's so many different facets of music and things that you can be great at and not so great at and whatever. So I'm constantly being humbled, and I learn every time I go out and listen to these guys play. I'm constantly learning, and I'm always a student of the craft, because like we were saying, like the guitar is so, there's so many different avenues that you can go down.
Yeah, and I'm curious, maybe you might not know the answer, but why do you think there's so many like really, really good musicians out in Philadelphia? I've actually never been. It's on my list of places to go sometime within the next year or two. But I guess just me being, naive, especially from California and born and raised in LA, I never pegged as Philadelphia as being like a hub for really talented musicians. And so again, you may not know the answer, but I'm curious, like, is there a specific reason why there may be so many good musicians in that general area?
Yeah. So there's like a heavy kind of gospel music scene here. So a lot of the players grew up playing in church, and they just got thrown in the mix since they were like 5 years old, playing organ, playing bass, playing, like it's the only place I'll go where I'll play, like I'll sit in on a jam session or play a set and somebody will come up to me and be like, hey man, is that your primary instrument? I'm like, what? Like, like there's just like everyone plays like multiple instruments here. Like it's really wild because they just got thrown playing out so early at such an early age and playing so much. And with the gospel scene or gospel music in general, and what I love about gospel music is that it's this mesh of so many different styles.
Yeah.
There's just everything in there, and the rhythm is just always just incredible. And that's something that the chords and the rhythm is always something that really attracted me to gospel music, and also where they come from when they play. And it's just such a pure place. So, you know, I try to bring in that approach, you know, when I'm playing as well.
You ever dabbled, or have you ever gone and played for a gospel church just for fun?
Yeah, I actually play for a church here every Sunday.
Wow!
And it's my favorite part of the week, man. It's like the people I play with are just incredible, and I'm always just constantly trying to keep up. And it's like even if I wasn't getting paid, I would still do it because it's such a learning experience, and I always leave like very kind of fulfilled in many different ways. So.
I'm curious, how was the first service that you ever did? Because I'll let you peek into my life a little bit. I actually tried playing for a gospel church once, and a little bit about my backstory here in LA. I'm Hispanic, so I grew up in the Hispanic church circuit, and Afro-Cuban music is very much a huge staple in the Hispanic church community. So I'm pretty well versed in the Afro-Cuban world, but it's very different from gospel, and especially like traditional, like church gospel music. So I tried once, and it didn't go as well as you would imagine. So I'm curious how your first experience with like playing for a gospel church was. Like, I mean, because to me it was intimidating, and it still is. I mean, I feel like no matter how good you get, playing gospel is always going to be challenging. So I'm curious how you attack that.
Yeah. Well, first off, mad respect to Afro-Cuban music, because I love Afro-Cuban music. I don't know much about it. I'm learning it and listening, but I just love the rhythms that are going down, especially with Afro-Cuban. In terms of my first experience, it was pretty bad because the way that the musicians communicate was not what I was used to doing. It was like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like where they come from as players is like more of an ear. Everything that they do, they hear. It's not so much of a theory sort of based thing. So when they play, they'll improvise chords, and they'll kind of expect you to know where they're going. And I wasn't well versed in listening to gospel music, so I didn't know much about it. I loved it, but I didn't know much about it. I didn't know the patterns and where the songs usually go. But just like to every genre of music and to every style, there's a formula. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it took me a few years to get that formula and to figure out how they heard chords, and it was by far the biggest inspiration and movement towards my style now was playing with these musicians, for sure, because they taught me what I always wanted to know, which was how to play from your heart as opposed to playing from your head, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So, but when I say heart, I also mean just like with your ear, you know, and anticipating things and just kind of playing what you hear as opposed to playing what's on a page, or thinking kind of like more heady kind of a more heady kind of approach, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And so that formula you were talking about, do you remember or know how to describe it a little bit? I'm curious, because there is definitely a formula to figure out, you know, how to play with your ear and how to follow along with the other instruments. Is there any way maybe you can describe it a bit?
The number system, like the Nashville number system. If you're going to go as like deep into theory, that's probably the deepest that they go. So the number system is how they communicate with chords, and with that kind of figuring out where to go and how to split things up. And it just basically brought everything into this kind of simplistic form, which I really it took me a while to understand, but it came through just kind of years of breaking down music and translating it into that language, and then eventually hearing a chord as a 4 chord, or hearing a chord as a 6 chord, or maybe a bunch of chords and be like, oh, that's a 7-3-6-2-5-1. And for those of you that are listening that don't know the Nashville number system, I apologize. But basically it's like there are 7 notes in a scale, and it's like the notes kind of stack up and harmonize to form chords over each note of the scale. And it's basically just a super simplified form of like chords being built over each note in the scale. So it has to do more with the bass or the root of the chord. And then there's more in-depth kind of substitutions and stuff but you just have to kind of experience that through listening to a lot of different forms of gospel and styles and chord progressions, and always bringing it back to that number system. And and then eventually it becomes, like a language, like everything else. I hope I didn't get too theoretical.
No, that was really, really cool. When you're playing at these churches or you're playing a song, do they basically, when they give you the song title and they give you a sheet, do they just write out the chord numbers and just put them like in bars, or do they give you notated music? I'm curious.
So one of the things that I still love, and it never gets old, is that we don't know the songs until the night before, and there's no possible way that you could really learn the songs perfectly before you go there. So what you have to do is you have to listen to the songs. See, what I did before was I made the mistake of trying to chart out the music, and that was super important. But after a while, there wasn't enough time. So it's more about just taking that time, instead of like writing, to listen and internalize the music. Internalize the syncopation, be able to sing the bass line, be able to sing the melody, and understand your role in the group as well, and what you actually have to do and what you actually don't have to do, because that'll save you time. Like I used to spend hours learning an intro to a song that like we didn't even end up playing.
Oh my God.
But the thing is that what I love about that experience and going through that is that it strengthens your ear. And what I've experienced throughout my career so far is if you have a great ear, you have to challenge yourself to grow your ear in as many ways as possible. And through that, the other things will come, the songwriting, the improvisation, but you got to be able to internalize that music first and be able to translate it from the inside out, as opposed to the opposite,
Yeah. So I'm a little more curious. What is a guitarist's role in like a typical, I wouldn't say typical, but like if you were to play a gospel set tomorrow, right? How would you figure out your role, and what is like a typical thing that guitarists do? Because I know just from watching tons of videos, I know what drummers do for the most part. I kind of can figure out what bassists do, but you know what? Because I'm a drummer, I've never had a chance to really focus on what guitarists do in gospel music. So I'm curious.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting that you asked that, because like, they're not like a strong point. Like you can get away with not having a guitarist in a gospel group, right? So it's like you got to kind of find a way to fit in. So I feel like the organ or the keys have the biggest chunks of the chords. Yeah. So my role as a guitarist, what I usually try to do is I usually try to stay more up on the neck, higher up in the neck, and play kind of smaller chords to kind of stay out of the way and act as a rhythmic element as well. Or just kind of throw in kind of tasteful licks here and there in between the phrasing of the vocalist. So I kind of jump back and forth between lead and rhythm. And, depending on the gig, sometimes there'll be like a lead player there. So I'll kind of just back up and just approach it from more of a chordal kind of standpoint,
Yeah. And at this point, do you feel like you've kind of figured out when you should switch back and forth between being a lead player and more of a chordal player? Is that something you kind of just do whenever you see like the singer look at you or something?
Well, yeah, it's tough, because like I know my role in my specific ensemble, but like when you go to other places and you play, they might expect something else out of you. So it's really hard to tell. But in terms of like where I'm at now, like I know what I need to do. And also what I try to do, man, is I try to just play what I like to play or what I stylistically feel like the song needs, because it's very open. Nobody's saying, hey, you should be doing this or be doing that, It's kind of, everything's very loose. So that's a really good thing and a really bad thing because sometimes it's tough to figure out what your role is,
Yeah. You ever been afraid to play like the wrong thing? Like you maybe had in your mind like, oh, you know what? It'd be cool if I just did this little lick here real quick and maybe had like second thoughts right before you played it.
Man, I bomb all the time. That's part of the experience, man. And that's what makes you kind of like more comfortable throwing yourself out there and just kind of trying things. And that's what I love about the gospel musicians as well, is that they're not afraid to try new things and to like basically practice on the gig and like try a new idea. And if they bomb, it's like they laugh it off and they just keep going because it's all about that energy that you give off, like it's not like it. And I think that's what I'm starting to find as well with people too. That's what people are really attracted to as listeners and viewers is like, the energy and the vibe that what your integrity is when you play, if you're trying to be this super heady kind of precise sort of musician, like there's no connection there. But if somebody watches you, you might be messing up all the time. But if you have a vibe to you, if people are feeling what you're doing, like they get your whole shtick, it's like when you look at some of these artists or like some of these really popular like rappers, you're like, this music is like, there's nothing really special about it, but the person has a vibe to them, so you connect that music with them it's like a whole kind of thing, so I don't know where I was going with that, but I just feel like your vibe is super important when playing with other musicians and also when you're performing or just doing your own thing as well.
I think I have to go back and play at a gospel church because first of all, it seems like everyone's having fun on stage while they're just playing gospel music. But whenever a drummer's doing a fill or a bassist does like a sick line, everyone just looks and just like, yeah, everyone's just like excited for what they just did. And you're absolutely right. I've seen plenty of videos where maybe like the drummer drops a stick or he doesn't land on the one and people just like laugh because it just seems like they're having a humongous party while they're up on stage while still keeping the song moving forward, and having that energy definitely teaches you how to have your own vibe, which I think you've done perfectly well, especially with your stuff online. I mean, that's primarily what got me, when I saw your first video, why I immediately like liked your stuff, because I saw it like it's weird to say, but like I saw it in your face and I saw it in the way you were holding your guitar and the way you were playing that you were feeling it.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up because I talk to some people, they're like, I'm not even really into what you're playing so much. I just love watching you play. Like, I just like, and they were just super honest with me, which I dug, because some people just don't like instrumental music or they don't really connect with it, which I totally understand. But they're like, oh man, like your vibe, like the way you play, like, how I watch you enjoying what you're doing. And I feel that, cause like, I feel like people secretly want to feel that as well. They want that enjoyment. Like they see people in the moment, just kind of jamming, doing their thing, or just like having purpose or integrity. And like it's like contagious. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it inspires people too. I mean, when you see someone having fun, especially with something that you can relate to, like playing guitar, it makes them want to go play guitar even more.
Yeah, definitely. And, like as I kind of go throughout this journey, which like so many things are changing for me constantly, like in terms of like where I'm going with my career and what I want to be doing and how I see myself as an artist. Like I'm starting to like simplify even more. 'Cause like I feel like sometimes I like force it, it's like you should just like kind of, I don't know, play what you feel, like not like what you feel like people want to, you know what I'm saying? Like it's described, but like just kind of more like a laid back sort of approach and give more of a feeling to that simplicity as opposed to less feeling to something more technical. So I'm going from like just kind of like trying to like simplify things more and see if I can like still come across to people with more of a vibe as opposed to a technical sort of approach, you know?
Yeah. So when you say simplify, what do you mean specifically? Do you want to play less, or are you talking in terms of Instagram? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. I mean like more just on a playing level, just kind of not like so like notey and like just sort of like super like rhythmic and just like what like my vibe, like whatever like I like to play and like to kind of fit into, you know, just kind of like learning how to find my style more and
exactly,
you know, not force anything, you know,
which is super important because going along with your vibe, I think I've talked about this before, and it's something I've noticed. It's like a pattern with very successful people that I've talked to and just met. I mean, you hear it all the time in stories, you know, of successful people whenever they're talking about how they got started. You know, a lot of them always say, I don't know, it was fun for me, or I just kind of just did what I felt was right, and it just worked out, and it happened so fast. You get all these mixed responses that essentially all point in the same direction, which is to not overthink it. You know, I think there's multiple ways to approach your career and approach music in general, but I think the one proved method that has always worked is going after what makes you feel happy, you know, what makes that good vibe, because maybe being technical in a way is kind of who you are. But if you're feeling it, people can see that. If you're just being technical just for the sake of being technical and you're not showing that good vibe, you know what I mean? Like what we were talking about, it shows. And I think it's important for everybody to relax in that way. You know what I mean? To stop thinking so much of what people want of them and just ask themselves, all right, what feels right to me, and go after that.
Absolutely. And like my philosophy, and you know, it's tough because like I'm constantly learning new things and see myself going in different directions with my career. So it's tough to kind of stay on the same thing. But like I notice like when I like we're as musicians and stuff, we're creators, you know, we're just like, this is my personal philosophy. So, I'm sure other people have different approaches as well, but like to not overthink what you're doing and just create and give value to people in any way that you can. And, you know, if like you may get something back, you may not, but like, I feel like that's what we're supposed to be doing. You know, each one of us has like especially from teaching over the years and just talking to so many different types of people that maybe, you know, aren't the best musician, but everybody's got something that they can offer, you know, as a creator, whether that's, you know, comedy. Like I love listening to like the Joe Rogan podcast and listening to those guys talk about comedy, because there's so many crossovers with music, you know, and how they go through their writing process and their struggles of being on stage and whatever. But anyway, like everyone's got a thing that they can offer. And I think when people kind of like just keep searching for that thing and like follow that path, you know, that's when like I feel like they can really just start to relax when they're honest with themselves about where they're going, you know, and what they really want to be doing. And sometimes it hurts, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, I got to leave that job, or I got to leave that gig or something like that. But, you know, I feel like that's what we're really supposed to be doing. You know, we all have this unique sort of thing that we can give to the rest of the world. And I got to be honest with you, man, like the most incredible thing out of this experience for me is not what I've gotten out of it on a like business or success, like what we think of as success, but it's the people that write in and we're like, dude, I started picking up the guitar after like 5 years of like not playing for like the longest time, or like, you know, like, yo, like your playing has like got me through like some tough times. Like that's the shit that I'm just like, dude, that is deep. That is heavy. That's the stuff that I'm going to remember when I'm old. And like, you know, looking back on my life, that like those, and when I look back on my life and I see people that, you know, decide to create and they had an effect on me, you know, it could just be such like a little thing, but it's like, that's the stuff that's like so memorable to me. So yeah, any creators out there, man, just keep trying to find what you want to do and like don't stop. Just keep grinding and like not grinding in a forceful way, but just like constantly ask yourself on a regular basis, is this what I want to be doing? Am I offering value to people? How can I help people, in whatever skills that I have? So that was a really long rant, but you know what I'm saying?
No, it's so true. I think you definitely attacked something that's very important that I ask myself all the time. And I think most successful people ask themselves all the time too, is what kind of value am I bringing to people? Anything that's really valuable, you can see that right away, whether it's through videos, whether it is through a product or I don't know, service, you can see right away when something's really, really valuable and there's been a lot of thought put into something. And I think it's something that a lot of creative people don't ask themselves too often, and it's fine. But I think, a lot of us, especially, being raised in music and wanting to be better all the time, you get so focused in like the actual practice of it all, like constantly practicing your scales or your licks or your riffs or rudiments, whatever, that you forget to ask yourself, all right, what kind of value am I going to give to the world with all this knowledge that I'm gaining on a daily basis? And again, I'm not saying practicing is a bad thing. No, practicing is absolutely necessary. I think there's a balance. With your career is a perfect example of that, is that your value is noticeable right away. When I look at your videos on Instagram or Facebook, I immediately recognized that you were feeling what you were playing, and that captivated me, and I was able to watch your whole video from beginning to end, and I felt something like, yeah, this felt really good. And down the line, it made me want to play music more. Granted, I'm not a guitarist, but your value to me was it inspired me to do it more for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's really great to hear. And just to touch on something that you were saying about like the practicing, for me, it's more about like having to do this as a career. It's something that is I have to constantly check myself with, is like, am I doing this for the money right now, or am I doing this because this is what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I where's my head at? Where are my intentions at? When I was younger, it was a lot easier to be on the right track with that. But as I get older, it becomes more challenging in ways. Yeah. But it's cool. It's still, I'm super blessed to be, on this journey and be able to play music every day and to teach people and all that stuff. And it's a constant journey. I'm still trying to find new ways to express myself creatively. And, sometimes it might be leaving certain things behind that, I've done in the past that maybe were financially beneficial for me, but it left me comfortable. Like I didn't feel like I'm growing in any way, So that's always a tough thing. And in terms of the success thing too, I feel like, I was thinking about this morning. I was like, what is success? Like, what is success to you? What is success to me? It could be so many different things, like I know musicians that are, we look at them and we would think they're successful, but they're just not happy people. Yeah. And then I look at people that, play just like local gigs in the city that nobody knows who they are. They're just chilling, but they're playing from their heart and they just love what they do. And they're just like really happy with themselves and like, how they're approaching life. And I find that very interesting, that whole topic of success, like what is success? And for me, I'm starting to find that success for me personally is just creativity and making a difference. Money is important for sure. I feel like you want to make sure that you have that in check, so you're not having to think about it to distort your creativity. It's just that whole thing of success is very interesting, can be described and approached in many different ways.
What's crazy is I was actually having a very similar conversation yesterday. I went to go visit my old campus with a friend, and we were just visiting some old professors. And we just started talking randomly in the car. Like, you ever wonder how it was easier, when you were like younger in middle school or high school or whatever, how we got so much done, you did music, all this stuff. And yet once you hit college and even after that, there's so much worry that comes out of nowhere about the future, about like what you're going to do, about making sure you make the right choices. And then it was so much easier to pursue music when I was younger, just because there was no specific worry about the day to day, or I had to be successful or make money, all this stuff. It was just, I honestly just did what I was passionate about. I think as you get older, there are a lot more responsibilities that, fall on your shoulders. I mean, that's for everybody, not just creative people. But I think the key to success that I have talked to with a lot of people is where you have to ask yourself exactly what you want and make it very simple. And I think your example of like the guy who plays, cover gigs at the local bar. Yeah, he may not be playing for 1 million people, but maybe all he wants is to be creative and have more free time. That's what a lot of people want.
Yes, lifestyle.
Exactly, the lifestyle. And I think that's something that a lot of us need to spend more time thinking about is not everyone can be, John Mayer, right? I mean, there's only one John Mayer, and it's very hard to get to that stage. I think the key is to figure out specifically what makes you happy and pursue things that revolve around that, not the other way around. Because things, jobs, money, gigs, they won't make you happy if you're not doing what drives you, what is important to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to touch on something that you were talking about a little bit earlier with being, having more responsibilities and stuff like that as you get older, I feel like the older I get, it's more for me about pressure. And it's pressure from other people and society when in reality, there's no real pressure. It's pressure that you put on yourself because I feel like we are creatures of like, we like to conform to things and we like to, go with the flow of what everyone else is doing. And I'm telling anyone right now that is a creator, you're gonna have this problem, especially as you get older, because you'll find that 99% of the people that are out there are going against what you're doing. So it's really important to either surround yourself with people who find those people that are on that path with you, that can help you, that can push you and can inspire you. And you guys can shoot ideas back and forth and, and push each other to get to that place that you guys want to be, either creatively or career-wise or whatever. And just make sure just go with your gut. Like, don't listen to, it's just so funny. The older I get, I'm just like, man, everyone's trying to figure this thing out. Nobody really has an idea of what, I mean, I know people that are literally homeless, and then I know people that are on Wall Street right now. And we're all just kind of like playing this part. We're trying to figure out what's going on and what's the best situation for us. And I'd say along with that whole kind of thing, just try to continue to follow what you feel like you should be doing. But also at the same time, I highly recommend to try different types of things. Yeah. And the one thing that you'll find is that you'll always want to get to a destination, but there actually is no destination. When I get to these places, man, when I think I'm cool with my career, something else inside me wants to go somewhere else. So I'm noticing it's this constant movement that I probably will have for the rest of my life, where you're chasing something that can't actually be caught, so it's, I know this is like super cliche, but like it's so just about the day-to-day journey and just micromanaging your daily kind of, how you craft your day, and like, did I do everything that I possibly could for myself creatively, health-wise, whatever, in that specific day, and then move to the next day. And like, don't get so wrapped up. It's important to have like a 5-year plan or whatever, but don't be so, and again, this is my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. Don't be so like crazy about how you're going to get there. You could be on the path that you're supposed to be on right now, and you think you're not even there yet, but you're on it. Like, you might even be on it right now. So like, I constantly have up and downs with this career, and it's only because I create expectations for myself that can't actually be met, or I focus on external things that are out of my control, just keep creating, be smart, obviously be smart about certain things, but like, don't get too wrapped up in in where you're supposed to be,
You're speaking a lot of wise words right now that hit home to me, because it took me a while to figure out exactly what you just stated, because it's so true. And it's true to everybody, not just creative people, but the expectations, in my opinion, it's what ends up killing creativity a lot of the time, because you see someone succeeding, or you see someone playing something or on a stage or whatever, and you immediately start asking yourselves, well, why am I not there? Or all this bunch of stuff that you can ask yourself to bring yourself down. But the reality is, no one knows the future. I mean, I think that's cliche enough as it is. So if you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, then really the important thing is today, and what you can do today to better yourself and to be happy. Because ultimately, you're right. I definitely know plenty of people that are millionaires, that are not millionaires, that, are just scrambling every day to day. But there's multiple people on either side that are happy and unhappy. Society tells us exactly what's important, which is like jobs, financial security, family, whatever, right? But then you see tons of people that have that aren't happy. And in my opinion, it's because they didn't figure out exactly what they wanted and what made them happy on that day to day. And you're not going to figure it out overnight. God knows I didn't figure it out overnight. It took me tons and tons of time to figure it out, but it was reminding myself every day that I had to always do what made me happy as best as I could, if that makes sense. And I think you're doing that really, really well. And I guess I'm curious, was there a moment prior to this, was there a moment where maybe like you weren't so sure if you were on the right path? Maybe a time where you weren't thinking this way? Because the way you're thinking now is phenomenal. I love it. But I'm wondering like how you got to this point.
Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, man, it's just like a constant struggle to make sure you stay on the right path and figure out like what you want to do. So like, for example, like I discovered over the past couple months that I love songwriting. I'm supposed to be, that's where I see myself. I see myself in the studio, like writing songs and like developing myself and coming out with my own music and like being completely independent. So with that comes another complete journey of all different skill sets, all different. So like, here we go. Let's start it. What do I need to learn? Figure it out. And if you talked to me 5 years ago and I had this, I would have been totally freaking out because I wouldn't have had the understanding that I have now. I've just been doing this for a while and I understand just the amount of setbacks that come with this career, man, and just like the ups and downs and that I tried to go a route where I felt like it was like it looked good and the money was good and blah, blah, blah. And I realized I was not happy. So it's like, okay, let's figure out, sit down, write to myself. What do I want to do? Get off the social media. That's another thing that I recommend all, like, especially millennials. Like I know a lot of people out there on Instagram, like for me personally, like at this point, I use that as a tool to get my workout. If you guys feel like, when you guys go on Instagram and you guys search, and scroll through all these people, you're just seeing these flashy moments of people's lives where they're on stage, killing it, they're looking good, they're, maybe doing this really cool vacation, and you're just seeing these highlights of stuff that's not actually real life. You're not seeing their downs, you're not seeing their lows. So what I recommend to people is like take a step back from that and like just focus on you. Like every time you go online, you're opening your mind up to focusing on other people's lives. Like it's really important to kind of stay in your own lane with what you're doing. And like, yes, there is a time where like, it's important to go and be inspired and like watch other people. But like, if you're in the grind mode, if you're in that, like just getting started and trying to just go day to day and move forward, like stay in your own lane. You don't have to, be everywhere and show people that you're doing everything. And, people see what I do on social media and they think, oh, like he's so successful, but I have my things that I'm working on just like everybody else, that's just a small percentage of what I'm trying to do with my life. And, it doesn't represent everything that that I am, and I'm working on a lot of different things, and I'm starting from scratch on a lot of different things. So, to everyone out there that thinks that like, oh, if you have a lot of followers on social media, that means nothing, just stay in your own lane and follow what your gut is telling you to do,
I love it, dude. I honestly love exactly what you said, because personally, I love social media. I think a lot of people still to this day don't see what a powerful tool it is. And I think that's actually was the original goal of this podcast, which has then since evolved to something else. But I think what you said is absolutely true. It's so easy to go online and, look at, I don't know, a celebrity's page and just see them, vacationing in the Bahamas, and then they're there in their mansion and stuff. But that's just a painting or like a small little snippet of what they did that one day. You don't know the challenges that anyone goes through. And the same is for yourself, and for myself, we both have our highs and our lows, especially every day. Who said this? Someone important said this, but I'm going to try and rephrase it. They basically said like, everyone wants to save the world, right? Everyone wants to be that guy or that girl who saves 1 million people, but you cannot do that if you don't save yourself first. And I know it sounds cliche, but the truth is, if you don't know who you are, if you haven't spent enough time figuring out what makes you happy, what drives you, insert whatever reason here, but if you haven't figured you out and spent enough time with yourself, you're not going to be able to help anybody or even like push anything forward or even look like you're having a good time. So I think you definitely bring up a good point, is spend time with yourself, step away from social media or whatever, and figure out who you are.
That is just very, very well said. It is just so easy to get wrapped up, and we live in two different worlds now, man. We live in this world, and when you think about how many times you go to your phone and you check, every time you go on Instagram or every time you go on Facebook, you're moving into a different world. You're getting sucked out of this one, and that world is not the real world. It's not. And I am so grateful to be in a time where the social media literally changed the trajectory of my career. Not so much it has provided me opportunities, but it has pushed me in new avenues where it's helped me find out who I am as a person and what I really want to do with my life. Yeah. And that for that, I am very grateful, but with that tool comes great responsibility. So I say one that's, on social media, every time you go on your phone, what are you doing? Is it helping you or is it hurting you? Are you using it for something? Are you gaining something out of it? Or is it a time killer? Is it we feel like we're so busy when we're on our phones and it makes us feel productive. But in reality, I think it's very important that we take a step back and we analyze, what exactly am I doing on this device or this platform, and to use it as a tool and not as a, time waster or whatever.
Yes. Agreed. The tool part, I absolutely agree. And you know what? I'm going to share a little bit about my experience too. I was really heavily involved with Instagram. I would say 2015, 2016. And then after a while, man, I got burnt out. It took I used to post every day. I used to plan out everything and which was great. Again, I am not shunning Instagram or Facebook or anything. I think it's important to have that. But I also think what you said is important too. It's a different world, which I cannot stress enough from anyone that's listening to this, is take it for what it is. It's a tool, which I absolutely highly recommend everyone needs to have and needs to learn how to use. But it's a tool first and foremost. It's not necessarily real life. I got burnt out doing this, daily thing, and I had to take a step away 5-6 months to recalibrate and figure out who I was and what I wanted. And, a lot of stuff happened in between, but this podcast came out of that. And so it's like one of those things where you have to be responsible enough and conscious enough to know yourself. And you only figure that out by stepping away and being with yourself. And then you start to figure out what to do next, where your process goes. And maybe the process is going back to social media, but with a new approach. It really is a balance. Use it as a tool, take it for what it is, but don't obsess over it. And I cannot stress that enough. Do not obsess over it, because it will burn you out,
Yeah, and we were kind of in the same path. 2015, 2016, I was just like heavy on it. And then I realized it was actually starting to kill my creativity. So I started to back up a little bit and focus, and started to try to focus on things in the real world. And but making sure that I was still trying to somewhat keep up with that. But yeah, I mean, it's very, very well said on the whole spending time with yourself. I mean, think about it, man. When was the last time, and this is for anybody that's listening out there, when was the last time you just sat on the couch for 15 minutes and did nothing? And you just kind of contemplated your life, and you just thought about yourself and we're constantly moving and doing things, and it doesn't leave much time for reflection. And that's what I feel like reflecting is so important. And we have, like I was saying earlier, we have so much available to us, but decision making is so difficult now because we have so many things that we could be doing. Think about when you go on your phone, you literally have a world in your phone. I mean, you could do so many different things. So it's so easy, not only in the phone, but in the real world now, to get distracted. And I find the most difficult thing, and the thing that I have to constantly readjust, is, am I on the path that I'm supposed to be on? Not on a monthly, but on a daily basis, making sure that you're moving in the right direction and you're not getting sidetracked. Anyone can contact you at any time. Anyone can call you and email you, and you feel this pressure from the world. And I felt this with Instagram for a while, and I'm like, this isn't even real, man. It's just something that I put on myself, and I expect, and people expect me to do this and that, but go with your gut, do your thing, create a simple sort of lifestyle, for yourself, where you can just really focus on what's important to you.
That's the important part right there. It's figuring out what's important to you, because it's always going to be different to everyone. And again, to anyone that's just starting out, I think I'm going to expand it a little bit further. Is Instagram definitely helped my career. And I think I was at a state where I could do that. I could do that every day because it's what I wanted. But at some point, my mind switched, and so I guess what I'm saying is, if you're at that stage where you want to be hustling every day and posting every day and doing that, dude, that's fantastic. Go for that. But I think the important thing to recognize is, think about yourself and always be aware of when your mind switches, because it will. If you're feeling this inclination, maybe you're tired, or maybe it's just I don't feel creative anymore, then that's a sign to take a step back and just take a deep breath and being all right, hang on a second. What am I doing? Because it's okay. And in fact, every successful person I've ever met has done that multiple times in their lives. They've taken moments to take a step back and be hang on, am I doing what's making me happy right now? Am I doing this because someone else wants me to? Am I putting this random pressure on myself for no particular reason? And then more often than not, they recalibrate, because they realize, and actually, let me even say it this way. It takes a lot of guts and discipline to recalibrate, especially when you've known something or when you've done something for a long time. For me, doing Instagram for 2 years straight, to stop doing it, I had a huge fear. What if I lost opportunities? Mm-hmm. What if I lost followers? All this bunch of stuff, which were justified. But you have to take the big step and believe in yourself and take a step back and be all right, hang on. If this isn't making me happy, then obviously there's something wrong and I got to figure out why. Plain and simple. And obviously I can't tell anyone specifically what's wrong or what's right. It's up to you. But the goal is to make sure you spend enough time asking yourself, is this the right thing for me to do right now? And if it is, great. If it's not, then think about it.
Very well said. Very well said.
Todd, dude, there was so many other things I wanted to ask you about, but this conversation went a particular direction that I loved. I absolutely loved, because I got a chance to figure out how you thought about this stuff. And I am amazed, because you're super wise, dude. I think me looking at your account and seeing how well you play and how far you're going, and now that you're really heavily involved with songwriting, I had no idea of your life experiences. And I absolutely loved your thought process. And I feel so rejuvenated.
Well, the feeling's mutual, and it's so great. It was kind of a real, I don't know. I just feel a sigh of relief because like this is like honest. I love talking about this kind of stuff, man, because it's so hard to find people that like to talk about like the guts of life, just like root sort of things, and it's what makes everyone tick. It's not surface or anything like that. It's like the real shit. So I'm all about that. Like if you ever want to get up and talk more about other things, I'm totally down, man. I had a really good time.
Thanks a lot, dude. Honestly, the feeling is mutual. I think we both explained it, and especially because you're right. I think as a creative person, and primarily, I talk about creative people because I'm a creative person. You're a creative person, and a big chunk of my audience are creative people. It's something we don't talk about enough, and I want to make sure that I at least do my part in making sure that we talk about what makes us tick, because I've had enough of seeing miserable musicians and miserable creative people that are constantly putting random expectations on themselves without taking time to really figure out what it is that makes them happy. Because I think there's this fear that they might discover that what they're doing now isn't what they're supposed to do. But it's okay to figure that out. You know what I mean? And this is something we could talk about for hours, but I just want to let you know that the feeling is mutual. And I think what we're doing here and what you said, I think is very important for anyone that's your fan or that's, looking to pursue their guitar career to understand going into this, that they are important first to figure out who they are and what they like and what makes them happy, and to always come back to that on a daily basis, to just keep on reflecting. Is this making me happy? If yes, cool. Keep going forward. If not, recalibrate. Yeah.
And just one more thing I just wanted to add, like for everyone that's like trying to figure out like focusing on their career or their, artistic goals, like, and this is my personal journey that I went through, but I found that it was what helps me on my journey with creativity is more of a lifestyle and a balance with everything, whether that's health, relationships, whether you're a spiritual person or not, whatever it is that like, giving back, all that stuff goes into the creativity. So like, for anyone that's like trying to like create, think about more of like the roots of things and, who you are as a person, for sure.
Absolutely, man. Well, thanks a lot for your time, dude. And honestly, like I'm looking forward to speaking to you more about this stuff in the future.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Todd. I know that I definitely did. And the reality is I'm always learning from my guests. These conversations remind me that I'm a student of life and that I have tons to learn. And if there's anything I want to nail in about this conversation, is to be willing to recalibrate and to constantly ask yourself, is this making me happy? I mean, the reality is no one can tell you what makes you happy other than you. And sometimes it takes a long time to figure that out. But the important thing is to be willing to ask yourself that question on a daily basis. It's not easy, it's difficult, but I guarantee you, if you're willing to constantly ask that question and pursue what makes you happy, you will definitely find success. So if you enjoyed this conversation, if you enjoyed some of the previous conversations, I strongly urge you, press that subscribe button because I have lots of great content coming your way.